up guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kackie and welcome to video number 9 in my 12 Days of Mindfulness series. We are in the home stretch, you guys. I can't believe it has gone by so quickly for me. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm happy that it's going to be kind of sticking around as a playlist for you guys to watch kind of like into the new year and things like that. That's what it's intended for, is kind of a nice calming reference to come back to when you need it. So it's going to be that for me probably too, because this has just been a really good way for me to condense all of my ideas, but you know, nobody's perfect and it's nice to kind of have a place to refer back to when I need to kind of like center my own brain. So I hope it's been helpful for you guys and I know it's going to be helpful for me. That said, you guys, this has definitely not been like the easiest series to make, because in order to kind of frame myself as sort of knowing what I'm talking about, I feel a lot of pressure that I'm putting on myself to kind of be perfect. And of course that is not possible, and it's a very common tendency for me to try and kind of aim for perfection. So I found that, you know, putting myself under a certain sense of accountability to do these 12 videos and do them on time and do them exactly how I would want them, of course it's really cool because it's like a potentially awesome accomplishment, but at the same time, I have to work harder to stay centered on it to make sure that I am not kind of like over stressing myself about it and trying to over perfectionize myself. That is definitely not a word. I want you guys to know that like this is still just one human to another or to others, that, you know, it's just me to you. So by no means am I trying to kind of frame myself as some kind of guru, and that's why I always encourage you guys to sort of like open a conversation and, you know, talk to me about it and this kind of stuff. So I just felt like I needed to get that out of the way, because today we're going to be focusing on the chakras. And the chakras are something that I thought for a long time were really niche and something that was just kind of like before we had science or something like that, you know, like we had different colors of bile or like we needed to do bloodletting. Like I've always thought the chakras were just kind of like some sort of pseudoscience, but they're actually far more just symbolic than that. They make a lot of sense from a practical standpoint, which is how I like to frame these videos. I like to give you guys a practical real-world application for this kind of stuff. This actually does have practical application to your life, and it can be a really good way of staying centered and focusing on the part of you that needs the most attention at any given time. So we're going to break down the chakras. We're going to kind of talk about what each one means and why, and then also kind of how that relates to your everyday from a practical standpoint and how they kind of help me. Okay, so I have all my chakra stones sitting here in front of me, and we're going to kind of walk through what each one means, and there is an order for a reason. So I'll stick a little insert in here of them kind of all in a row so that you can sort of see the pretty little like rainbow spectrum that they make that makes them actually easy to remember, and we'll do a little quick run through of what each one represents. So this is kind of this deep sort of like earth color. I'm not really sure exactly off the top of my head what each one of these stones is. I will label these after the fact. How's that? Ding! Your root chakra, which is sort of like, you know, the very base of your body, it represents sort of security and survival instinct and grounding, if you will. And then we move on to the sacral chakra, and this sort of represents, like it says, your sacrum. So I mean, your reproductive organs and your stomach and all of that area. So I mean, it kind of represents like sensuality, reproductive health, intimacy, pleasure, procreation, that kind of thing, or anything really that has to do with that part of your body. The next is your solar plexus chakra, and this is actually, I know for a fact this is a citrine because I really like citrine. This sort of represents desire and abundance, monetary wealth, vitality, and energy. So this is a very popular stone because it represents abundance, and so I mean everybody kind of wants abundance one way or another, so citrine becomes a very kind of, you know, commonly valued chakra stone. Then we move into rose quartz, which is a very easy thing to liken to your heart chakra. And your heart chakra represents everything that you would think that it would. It's sort of having an open heart, so love, compassion, empathy, hope, just a lot of the really positive things that you think of when you think of being a little bit more vulnerable with yourself and the sort of positivity that you can put out into the world. And then we move into another valuable, awesome one, which is the throat chakra. I think this is a lapis lazuli. I'm not sure. I have two throat chakra stones, so I can't remember which one's which. But the throat chakra, as you might imagine, stands for communication. It can also stand for healing and creativity, essentially you putting out your vision into the world through your thoughts, words, actions, that kind of thing. Just your way of expressing yourself. Then you got your third eye chakra, which is right about here, and that is represented by this here, this lovely amethyst, and it basically represents intuitive power, clairvoyance, your psychic senses. It also has to do with transmuting negative energy into positive energy. Getting a little more metaphysical here, but amethyst in particular really deals with like sobriety and healing. And the third eye chakra, the third eye in itself is always meant to be sort of some kind of like clairvoyant understanding. And then you have the crown chakra, which is symbolic more than anything, and it is very abstract, and it has to do with higher understanding, enlightenment, just pure clarity, like the Buddha or anything else, you know, just basically like a transcendent sort of sense of understanding, and that's represented by clarity, you know, like a good quartz. And it actually took me a while of sort of using these on my own to realize that they exist in a hierarchy, right? So if we compare that briefly to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, who he's just a, you know, a very famous psychologist. Basically, you start with your physiological needs. You need food, water, warmth, rest, right? You need to be able to exist. And to me, that relates directly to the root chakra. It is about survival. So when you are kind of at your weakest, a lot of times what you need to focus on is your root chakra. For me, a lot of times that has to do with anxiety and depression. In order to even address the higher meanings and the implications and the reasons that I'm feeling depressed, and even begin to approach them from a practical standpoint in order to try and battle them or solve for them, I have to first start by calming my heart rate and making myself eat and sleep enough and just take care of my body in order to be functional enough to even start holding myself accountable to my feelings. And so that's how I kind of relate that base of Maslow's pyramid to like the root chakra. And so that kind of covers your basic needs. To me, that's very much the way that the root chakra and the sacral chakra work. So essentially taking care of yourself and then, you know, procreating for the future of the world. And that's the basic human needs from just like a very cosmological standpoint. Then you get into your psychological needs. So you have like belongingness and love, and that's like the third from the bottom tier on Maslow's pyramid. And then to me that sort of represents your heart chakra and your solar plexus chakra. You have kind of the urge to move forward in life. You know, you have kind of the urge to accomplish things or get monetary wealth, but you also need companionship and you need fulfillment from giving yourself over to another person. You also, you know, want to feel like you have a place in the world, and in order to kind of participate in the world, you kind of have to adopt a little bit of its values in order to sort of consent to be governed, and you are kind of offering a little bit of your heart in order to get those kinds of rewards in return. And so those are sort of your like psychological needs, but those can't happen until you've taken care of that like survival part of yourself. And then you have your self-fulfillment needs. That is the very top of Maslow's pyramid, and that is basically as you have created this really nice foundation for yourself of your basic needs and survival, and then you have given yourself, you know, given of yourself enough to have these sorts of nice to haves, essentially, you know, like a good grounded relationship and, you know, a great job, or some other means of, you know, making yourself feel like you are getting some kind of esteem needs met in your life, then you start to be able to focus on kind of your higher mind. And that is sort of the metaphysical idea of like achieving your greatest potential. And to me, that sort of like is bridged by your throat chakra and then goes straight to your third eye and your crown chakra. So essentially, these are all symbols of this hierarchy of our human needs, where if they're not being met, we can point to a certain part of this hierarchy, this tiered system, that we can say, well, this is where I need to focus right now, because this is kind of like, I can't focus on all this stuff up here because I haven't done this yet. Like, this is the missing piece. And if I pull that out like a Jenga block, like everything's gonna fall down. And so I need to like, you know, pay attention to this. The important thing that I have to remind myself of a lot is that just because you have built the foundation one day doesn't mean that you can't fall back down that ladder the next day. You're gonna be in a different place from the hierarchical standpoint of the chakras on any given day. And it's important to be humble enough and not shame yourself to address that part of yourself that needs it that day. Because sometimes I'll think to myself like, wow, you know, like I've had a really great practice today and I've really invested in myself. You know, Mike and I are doing awesome. I just got paid and I'm feeling really good about my job, and I can really focus on like, you know, all of my sort of like self-actualization needs. I can just spend some time like reading and meditating and just like writing or making videos or whatever. And then other days I can't get out of bed and I'm really just like, I have like an anxious attachment with work or an anxious attachment with Mike, and I feel like I'm not getting enough done, or that it's bad that I'm trying to tie too much of myself to getting stuff done. And then it's sort of this weird cycle where I start to realize like my body is starting to react in a negative way to the negative feelings that I'm having, and I need to return to my root chakra and just take care of number one in order to even be able to think about, you know, my crown chakra someday. Like I have to refocus and sort of just start at the beginning, and that's okay. That's what they're there for. That's what this kind of like sense of understanding yourself is there for, because if you don't understand where your needs are coming from, then you're only going to shame yourself for sort of like falling backwards. And the whole point is that every single one of those times is just an opportunity to learn and grow and sort of reinforce that part of yourself. And I have to remind myself of this all the time. I am very vulnerable to perfectionism and also to seasonal affective depression. I have a different experience really every day, and some days kind of like bleed into others in really good ways where I feel, you know, like a sense of accomplishment can kind of like, I can ride on that for a few days. And on those days I really like to share. I really like to get on here and share with you guys. And then there are other days where I am just really like, I almost feel guilty for coming and, you know, sort of like speaking my heart in a certain way, because I don't want to misrepresent that like everything's perfect, because it's not. I basically wanted to include this in this series because I think it's just such a valuable thing for all of us to remember, that we're all really fallible, and that's kind of by design. It's beautiful in that way. It's not us, you know, making mistakes and falling down necessarily. It's not something that's just a terminal illness that, you know, only we're afflicted with or something like that. It's very much just part of the process. And so I'm reminding myself of that as I'm reminding of you of that. Like it's you know, a perfectly natural process, but sometimes it's really hard for me, especially when I'm doing really well, to deal with failure and to deal with, especially like intrapersonal failure. You know what I mean? Where I feel like I'm not living up to my own expectations. And so it's so important for me to kind of remember that, you know, the self-actualization goals really can't happen unless I take the time to continue to reinforce my stable foundation. So I hope that you guys get something out of this. I hope this makes some sense to you, and I hope that this also helps to kind of demystify the whole chakra theory system, whatever, and how it kind of relates to your life from a practical way. If you liked this, guys, give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. And if you want to keep hanging out with me on this channel, there's just a few more videos in this series, but we're going to get right back to normal, everyday, you know, product reviews and stuff like that as soon as the series is done with. So go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And guys, I hope you're having a really lovely month, and we're getting really close to the holidays, so I hope you guys are having a really nice holiday season, and I will talk to you in